The first sign wasn't the storm, but the silence. Captain Mara Vance crouched on the dune ridge, visor tilted against the amber glare. The desert below stretched endless, flat as hammered brass, except for the ragged domed shelter squatting in the valley. Her HUD flickered a warning, pressure drop accelerating. She'd expected that. What she hadn't expected was the absence of calm traffic. The evac craft were gone, lanes interdicted, and yet the mast down there had still been broadcasting. A traitor's beacon. She raised her rifle and fired a single shot. The mast's spine bent and fell, sparks trailing like dying fireflies. The evacuees behind her gasped, but Mara didn't flinch. Better no signal than one guiding veteran skimmers straight to their position. "Inside the dome!" she barked, voice sharp against the hush. 54 souls moved hesitantly at first, families clutching bundles, elders dragging carts, a crate of chickens squawking in protest. Elias Coe, the geologist, stumbled beside her, tablet clutched to his chest like a relic. "You just cut our rescue," he hissed. "They weren't coming," Mara said flatly. "Not through an interdiction net. That mast was painting a target. If it stayed, we'd all be ash in 5 minutes." Elias faltered, but the look in her eyes stopped him from arguing further. They reached the dome. Up close it looked like junk, a half-collapsed geodesic frame, patched with slurry, stitched with wire. Veteran patrols had laughed at such shelters before, calling them sand coffins. They never understood the throats. Inside, the air shifted. Ceramic ribs hummed faintly, alive with resonance. The throats, spiral chambers threaded through the frame, would turn the desert's howl into something usable: power, pressure relief, noise camouflage. Fragility was its armor. Mara trusted it more than steel. She shoved the door closed with Iori Tan, her second. The crossbar dropped with a heavy clank. The dome groaned as the wind pressed harder. Children whimpered. A baby hiccuped. Doc Farrow moved quietly through the crowd, counting heads, calming with gentle touches. "Nash," Mara said into her mic. "Eyes on the horizon." The corporal's voice came back with static grit. 3 heat blooms, grid 9-3. Fast and low. Talon skimmers. Sleek, glass-winged hunters that rode storms like predators rode surf. Their commander, Prefect Catherine, favored theatrics, public executions, mockery broadcasts in flawless trade. Mara had crossed him before. Static sharpened. Catherine's voice filled the dome, too calm for the chaos outside. "Burrows," he said. "Cute toy. Doors too small for mercy." Mara cut the channel. "Let him talk to himself." Iori ran her hand along the keel strut, frowning. A crescent gouge marred the metal. Not natural. A clean, deliberate cut. "This isn't stormware," Iori muttered. "It's sabotage." Sarah Lyle appeared, quartermaster by title, hawk-eyed by nature. She held up a shard no bigger than a nail clipping, sleek, silver, faintly pulsing. "Beacon needle," she said. "I found it in the water cask seam. There could be more." Mara crushed it under her boot. "Sweep every rib. Find them before they sing." But Sarah's jaw tightened. "We'll miss some. They're too small. Then we drown their signal," Mara snapped. She keyed Iori. "Prep the throats for overdrive. Push so much noise their sensors choke." Iori hesitated. "We'll bleed ears, maybe rupture a mic." "Do it anyway." The dome shivered, a low hum growing into a bone-deep moan. The evacuees covered their ears. Children cried. Outside, the Talons shrieked across the sand, their clamps trying to seize the frame. Each time, the throat's resonance slipped their grip, as if the dome itself exhaled and sent them skidding. "They're laughing," Nash reported from the roof cam. "They think we'll panic." Mara allowed a thin smile. "Let them." Then the sky changed. A hiss rose beneath the storm's roar, sharp and layered, like countless blades whispering in unison. Elias's face drained. "Glass locusts," he whispered. "Programmable grit. Billions of charged particles that burrowed along stress lines, gnawing structures from the inside." Catherine wasn't knocking, He was unmaking the door. Overdrive now! Mara barked. The throats screamed, resonance climbing until vision blurred. Sand fused into glass outside, lightning flickering across dunes. The evacuees crouched, hands over ears, teeth rattling in their skulls. Then, chaos inside. Jal, one of Sarah's aides, lunged for the crossbar, cutter in hand, bag slung at his shoulder. Silver needles spilled as the bag tore open. Beacons. Human-made. Sarah grappled his arm. Sparks sprayed as the cutter bit into a rib. Nadim, the 12-year-old boy shadowing Mara for days, kicked Jal's shin. The man snarled, eyes wild with desperation. Passage! He screamed. They promised me a seat. You think there's room for all of us? I chose me. Mara dropped him with a single blow. The cutter skittered under a pallet. She zip-tied his wrists to the keel and turned back to the crowd. Anyone else? Silence, heavy and bitter. The dome shook again. Nash's voice cracked. Cap, it's not just talons anymore. Something bigger. Looks like a scythe, but walking. They're pushing the whole ridge to bury us. Catherine's voice slid back through, silk and cruel. You can't even survive what's coming, human. Mara keyed external, her tone steady as steel. You think we built a roof? We built a throat. She pulled the emergency lever. Anchors released. The dome sank, half swallowed by the dune. Resonance shifted, vents turning into gills, the entire structure locking deeper into sand as the sides walls slammed overhead. The world roared. The throats drank. For a moment, victory tasted real. Then the keel strut groaned, cracks splitting wider. Iori's eyes darted to it. Sarah's too. Mara ran the math in her head. If it buckled, the dome wouldn't explode, it would fold neat as paper. She grabbed the crank for the manual strut and halt. The jack screamed down into place, bracing the brake by inches. That was when the door latch moved. Not from their side. A thin seam of stormlight split the jam. An eye peered through, multi-lidded, unblinking, calm. Catherine himself. The bar lifted an inch. Then two. Mara's grip tightened on the crank. Nadim's small hands still clutched the door, his knuckles white. The evacuee's breath caught. And in that suspended moment, between fracture and collapse, between storm and silence, the war truly arrived at their door. The shelter groaned like a living beast trying to hold itself together. Mara's hands burned against the crank as the manual strut locked into place, bracing the sabotaged keel for now. But the prefect was already inside their perimeter. The sound of the bar lifting wasn't just mechanical stress. It was a deliberate hand testing the lock, inch by inch. Center holds! Iori shouted, breathless, sweat streaking her dust-caked face. For how long? Sarah demanded, eyes on the crack that spidered wider with every vibration. Mara didn't answer. She scanned the evacuees, terrified but quiet now, silence born of raw survival instinct. Even the children had gone mute, their wide eyes following every shift of the walls. Nadim clutched the crossbar with both hands as if he could anchor it himself. Another click. Another inch. Catherine's voice seeped through the storm, smooth, unhurried. You sing well, Captain Vance. A shame to waste that throat in the sand. Open and I'll spare your young. You too if you kneel. Mara keyed the calm. Her reply was calm steel. You've mistaken me for someone who bargains with executioners. The alien chuckled softly. Not recorded, not filtered, real. Then I'll educate you. The bar jolted violently. Screws shrieked in their sockets. Nadim stumbled but refused to let go. Sarah pulled him back, teeth clenched. We can't just wait, Iori said. If he forces the door, none of this matters. Agreed, Mara said. Options? Counterattack, Sarah offered instantly. Her gaze flicked to the scattered beacon needles Jal had tried to smuggle. If we can rewire those to overload, we could flash the storm with false signals. Blind the talents. Elias nearly choked. That's suicide. You trigger a cascade, sand charged like a minefield. We'd drown in it. Sarah's jaw hardened. Better to choke them than open the door. Mara waited. Reckless. Risk of frying their own throats. But doing nothing meant certain death. She looked at Elias. Can you do it? The geologist hesitated, hands trembling around his tablet. Yes. If I patch into the resonance feed. But the harmonics, if they collapse? They won't, Mara said, cutting him off with conviction she didn't feel. Do it. Elias swallowed hard, then slid to the battery core, fingers dancing over trembling circuits. Meanwhile, Mara turned to Sarah. Restrain Zhao somewhere out of sight. If anyone else sees him, panic will finish what the Vadran started. Sarah nodded, hauling the traitor deeper into the dome. He spat curses at her, but the howling storm outside devoured them whole. The floor vibrated again, this time not from the wind, but from something heavier moving overhead. Nash's voice crackled through. Cap, they've brought the scythe closer. It's unfolding. Like a sail. It's turning the storm into a blade. Mara's gut tightened. Kethrin wasn't just testing their shelter, he was reshaping the battlefield itself. Elias! She barked. Now. The man screamed something half prayer, half math, then slammed a sequence into the feed. For a moment nothing happened. Then the air inside the shelter went taut, the pitch of the throats rising into a teeth-gritting wail. Outside, the sandstorm convulsed. Lightning arcs danced like burning whips across the horizon. The locust swarm fractured, their perfect spiral scattering as false beacons flared and died. Nash whooped through comms. It's working! Their formation's collapsing! But the victory was fleeting. The scythe didn't falter. Instead, it shifted, its surface rippling like liquid glass. The wall of charged sand split into two arms curving around the ridge. They weren't trying to smash the shelter anymore, they were trying to bury it alive. Elias's face drained white. They're shaping dunes! They'll swallow us whole. Not if we move first, Mara said. Iori gaped at her. Move? This dome isn't mobile. Yes, it is, Mara said grimly. We designed it to flex, remember? Anchors can release. We let the storm drag us. Drag us? Elias echoed, horrified. Better dragged than buried, she snapped. Prep the anchors. Iori sprinted to the control valves. The evacuees, sensing the shift, began murmuring. Fear spread like smoke. Nadim's voice cut through, high but steady. Do what she says. The captain knows. That one sentence steadied them more than anything Mara could have said. She gave him a sharp nod of thanks. The anchors hissed free. The dome lurched, throwing people against the walls. Screams filled the air. The structure groaned, tilted, then began sliding with the storm's current like a ship caught in a tidal wave. Sand cascaded over the dome, battering it from all sides, but the throats adapted, shifting resonance to keep the air pressure stable inside. Nash's panicked voice buzzed in Mara's ear. Cap, they're pursuing, the talons are circling. You've got seconds. Mara steadied herself, bracing against the keel strut. Then we give them seconds they won't forget. She keyed external speakers and shouted into the storm, voice amplified by the throats until it blended with the howl of the wind. You think we're prey? Listen carefully, Kethrin. We don't break in the storm, we ride it. As if on cue, a surge of resonance pitched through the dome, amplifying her words into a thunderous roar that shook the air itself. For the first time, she thought she heard hesitation in the alien chatter. But Kethrin's reply came cold and precise. You ride only toward your grave. The scythe's twin arms slammed inward. The dome shuddered violently, nearly tipping. People screamed again. Elias lost his footing, nearly crushing his tablet. Iori clung to the crank with white knuckles. Sarah stumbled back into view, knife in hand, face pale. Mara, we've got a bigger problem. She dropped something on the floor. One of Zhao's beacon needles. Still glowing. Mara's stomach dropped. How many did he plant? Sarah's eyes flicked to the walls. Enough. They'll track us no matter where the storm takes us. The realization hit like a bullet. Even if they survived the scythe, the veteran would never lose their trail. The betrayal was deeper than one cut keel. It was a chain dragging behind them. Nash's voice turned urgent. Cap, they're closing in fast. You've got maybe 1 minute before they breach. Mara made the call. Then we make this shelter a weapon, not a coffin. Elias, can the resonance blow? He froze. Blow? You mean detonate? It would tear us apart. It'll tear them first, she said. Answer the question. He swallowed. Yes. If we overload the piezo stacks and lock the throats wide, the storm would carry the shockwave for kilometers. But the shelter won't survive it. The silence that followed was heavy. The evacuees had heard. Faces turned toward her, fear, hope, despair mingled in their eyes. Sarah broke it. If we do this, half of us die inside. If we don't, all of us die outside. Iori looked at Mara, voice hard. What's the order? Mara stared at the glowing beacon needle on the floor, then at Nadim clutching Sarah's hand. The boy's eyes said what no one dared, don't let us die for nothing. Her voice came out steady. Prep the overload. But don't trigger until my signal. We're going to bleed them first. The shelter bucked again as the scythe's arms closed tighter. Sparks rained from the strut. The dome sang higher, louder, like a throat screaming for air. And then, through the storm's chaos, came something else. A signal. Weak, fractured, but human. Nash gasped. Cap, someone's broadcasting on the old distress band. From outside the ridge. Mara froze. Reinforcements? Survivors? Or another trap? Either way, the decision was now impossible to delay. She lifted her chin. Patch it through. Static filled the dome, then a desperate voice. This is Commander Reese, Strike Wing Delta, requesting immediate coordinates. We've got one shot to punch through. Hold your ground. The evacuees erupted in ragged cheers. Elias sobbed in relief. Sarah allowed herself a grin, fleeting but real. Mara's heart pounded. Reinforcements meant hope, but also meant bait. Catherine would expect it. She spoke into the calm, voice iron. Reese, this is Vance. You're late. Bring the storm with you. Outside, the scythe tightened its grip. Inside, the evacuees clung to one another, waiting. Mara knew the truth. Salvation or slaughter stood minutes away. And the next decision she made would decide which. The storm was a living monster now. The scythe had turned the desert into a weapon, its arms grinding dunes into a rolling avalanche aimed straight at the shelter. Inside, the throats screamed like tortured violins, holding the pressure at bay for another breath, another second. But it wouldn't last. The keel strut, even braced, moaned under the weight of betrayal and physics alike. Mara pressed her calm tight against her jaw. Reese, repeat your position. The static thinned, and his voice cut through, hoarse but alive. Above the ridge. Engines fried, but I've got 2 wings left and payload to burn. I'll need a marker. You give me that, I'll carve the scythe in half. Elias looked up from the batteries, pale and drenched in sweat. A marker? In this storm? It's suicide to light anything. Then it's good bait, Mara said. Her eyes cut to the beacon needles scattered on the floor. They wanted to track us? Fine. Let's make it worth their time. Sarah stiffened. You mean arm them? Wire them to the resonance, Mara confirmed. Turn their treachery into a flare. Elias hesitated, hands trembling. If we miscalculate the frequency, the shockwave collapses the dome. It'll shred us from inside. Mara's voice was low, deliberate. And if we don't, we're dead anyway. I trust you, Elias. Do it. The geologist swallowed hard, then bent to his work, sliding beacon slivers into the circuitry like glass bullets. Sparks hissed. The storm seemed to press closer, curious. Meanwhile, Mara keyed Nash. Status outside? A pause, then his voice came raw. Cap, you're not going to like it. Catherine's talons have formed a ring. They're waiting. They know something's coming. Good. Mara muttered. Let them wait. She crouched beside Nadim, who hadn't left the door since the first attack. His small fingers were clenched white around the bar. His eyes, too old for 12, met hers. Are we going to die? He asked. The question cracked something in her chest, but Mara answered like a soldier. Not today. Today, we teach them what it means to stand in a storm. He nodded once, as if sealing a pact. The dome lurched violently as the sides' arms slammed inward again, sand cascading over the walls like a collapsing sea. Elias cried out. It's ready! Beacon flares sink to the throats. But once I trigger. On my mark, Mara said. She thumbed the comm. Reese, flare incoming. You get one pass. Make it count. Copy that, Reese answered. Wing Delta standing by. The air turned electric. Every hair on every arm rose as the throats reached a pitch that felt like it was splitting atoms. The evacuees huddled tighter, some whispering prayers, others silent, eyes locked on Mara as if she were the only thing tethering them to life. Then Catherine's voice slid in, smooth and cruel. You've made me curious, Captain. You sacrifice so much for so little. Tell me, when your shelter folds, what will your children sing then? Mara keyed her mic, her tone sharp as a blade. We'll sing over your grave. She looked at Elias. Do it. The beacons fired. A blinding lance of resonance shot through the storm, amplified by the throats until the very air glowed. Sand particles fused into glass mid-flight. The scythe flinched, its liquid arms writhing against the sudden surge of false data. Talons shrieked across comms, their sensors overwhelmed by the storm of signals. Now, Reese! Mara bellowed. From above, the scream of engines tore through the howl. Even through the storm, even through the chaos, they heard it, a squadron punching through hell with guns blazing. Explosions lit the horizon in fractured glimpses, streaks of white fire carving into the side's surface. The alien construct rippled, cracked, then tore apart as detonations ripped across its frame. For a heartbeat, the storm became a sea of burning glass. The evacuees erupted in ragged cheers. Elias sobbed against the battery core. Sarah grinned ferally, knife still in hand. Even Nadim laughed, wild and breathless. But Mara didn't cheer. She listened. Beneath the roar of victory, she heard something else. A new sound. A low, resonant pulse that didn't belong to the storm, or to them. Her blood went cold. He's not done! Nash's voice screamed through comms. Cap, Catherine's not retreating, he's landing. Right on top of you. A thunderous impact rocked the dome. Dust rained from the ceiling. The evacuees' cheers choked into silence. The bar at the door bowed inward, groaning. The multi-lidded eye appeared again, closer, colder. Then the voice, no longer distant, but right there at the threshold. Your shelter has teeth. Show me if you do. The doors shook violently. The bar jumped an inch. Nadim screamed but held on. Sarah lunged to brace it with him. Mara's pulse hammered. Catherine himself had come. The alien overlord who'd crushed colonies with words and storms alike was now at their door. Reese! She barked. Status? Static. Then faint. We're hit. Talons regrouping. I can't. The transmission cut. They were alone again. Mara looked at the evacuees. At Elias, pale and trembling. At Iori, her hands bloody from the crank. At Sarah, knife flashing in the stormlight. At Nadim, small and unyielding. This was it. The moment where humanity either broke or burned bright enough to be remembered. She set her rifle against her shoulder, aimed at the door. Her voice cut through the storm, through fear, through everything. We didn't ask for this war, she said, steady and defiant. But we'll finish it. On our terms. The evacuees straightened. Even the children's eyes hardened. The shelter hummed, alive with the storm's song, as if the throats themselves were listening. The bar creaked higher. The door began to open. And Captain Mara Vance stepped forward to meet the prefect face to face. The door cracked open, a slice of stormlight cutting across the shelter's dark interior. Sand hissed through the seam like 1,000 knives sharpening in unison. The evacuees recoiled, but Mara stepped forward, rifle steady, shoulders square. The silhouette filled the breach, taller than a man, armored in glassy plates that shimmered like obsidian under lightning flashes. Prefect Catherine. His multi-lidded eyes gleamed with contemptuous calm, as if the storm itself bowed to him. "You stand," he said, voice smooth and amplified, carrying easily through the roar. "Good. I prefer to kill things that understand what's happening." Mara didn't lower her weapon. "Then understand this, you've already lost." The alien tilted his head, amused. "Your bravado is quaint. But a dome of sand and broken metal is not victory. It's a tomb." The door screeched wider, buckling under his strength. Nadine clung to the bar, refusing to let go. Sarah pressed in beside him, knife ready, eyes wild. Behind them, Elias whispered frantic prayers over the battery core while Iori stood by the crank, every muscle trembling with fatigue. Mara keyed her calm, eyes never leaving Catherine. "Nash. Report." Silence. Then static. Then, "Alive. But I'm pinned, Cap." He landed with an escort. "You're on your own." Exactly what she expected. Mara leveled her rifle. "You shouldn't have come down here, Prefect. Now you're not a storm. You're just a body in a doorway." He smiled with too many teeth. "Then break me, human!" The door burst inward. The storm surged through, spraying the interior with grit. Catherine stepped inside, his presence oppressive, the weight of his reputation pressing on every soul in the shelter. The evacuees screamed. The dome shuddered. The keel strut cracked deeper. Mara fired. The rifle's burst punched across the room, rounds slamming into his chest. Sparks scattered, shards of glassy armor flew, but he didn't fall. He laughed. "You throw pebbles at a mountain." He moved like lightning, striking the rifle from her hands with a sweep that cracked the air. Mara staggered but rolled, scooping up Elias's abandoned tablet as if it were a weapon. "Get back!" she shouted to the evacuees. "All of you!" Catherine advanced, steps deliberate. "You defied storms. You turned sand into voice. Impressive. But your voice ends here." Iori lunged with a wrench, screaming. He caught her mid-swing, lifted her like a child, and hurled her against the wall. She crumpled, coughing blood but alive. Sarah charged next, knife flashing. He backhanded her, the blade clattering away, her body skidding across the floor. Mara's heart clenched, but she didn't break. She couldn't. Elias shouted from the batteries. "Captain? The overload, it's primed. If you give the order." Catherine's eyes snapped toward him. The alien moved. Mara didn't think. She sprinted, intercepting, slamming herself bodily into Catherine's side. Pain tore through her ribs, but momentum carried them both into the central strut. The dome groaned under the impact. He snarled, voice still calm despite the exertion. "You can't stop inevitability." Mara spat blood into his face. "Watch me." She jammed the tablet's interface into the beacon bundle still glowing at the keel. Elias screamed in protest, but Mara's fingers flew. She wasn't looking for safety, she was aligning chaos. The throats shrieked, resonance building into a frequency that rattled bones and split stone. The storm outside bent toward them, as if the desert itself were being drawn through a funnel. Catherine realized too late. His expression, cold certainty cracking into alarm, was the first real victory she felt all war. "You'll die too," he hissed. Mara's lips curved into a bloodied grin. "Then I won't be lonely." She slammed the final sequence. The shelter screamed. The piezo stacks ruptured. The throats tore themselves open, vomiting resonance into the storm. Sand fused into sheets of glass midair. The scythe's remnants shattered. Talons lost control, tumbling into dunes like broken toys. The ridge itself collapsed, the desert folding in on itself. Inside, the dome imploded. Supports buckled. Walls folded. Screams rose and fell in a single, terrible harmony. Mara felt herself torn sideways, weightless in the blast. Catherine's hand clawed at her throat, but the storm took him too, dragging him into the maelstrom of glass and lightning. His final words were ripped away, swallowed by the desert's roar. Then silence. When Mara's eyes opened, she was lying in grit, the sky above a bruised canvas still streaked with fading lightning. The dome was gone, reduced to shards of ceramic and twisted ribs. Bodies were scattered in the sand, but movement. Groans. Survivors. Sarah crawled upright, face bloodied, eyes burning. Iori staggered from the wreckage, clutching her ribs but alive. Elias lay stunned but breathing beside the dead battery core. Nadim. She sat bolt upright. Nadim! The boy emerged from behind a cracked rib of the shelter, coughing, eyes wide. He stumbled to her, threw his arms around her waist. I held the bar, Captain. I didn't let go. Her throat tightened. She hugged him back, hard, though her ribs screamed. I know, kid. You saved us. Above, engines roared. Reese's voice crackled through a battered comm unit. Vance! We saw the blast from orbit. You're still breathing? Mara keyed it with trembling fingers. Some of us. The prefect's dead. A stunned pause. Then, you killed Catherine? She looked at the wreckage, at the desert still humming with residual resonance. No. The desert did. We just gave it a throat. Hours later, as rescue shuttles descended, the survivors huddled together in the sand. They were battered, bleeding, but alive. For once alive. Sarah sat sharpening her recovered knife, muttering. They'll send another prefect. They always do. Mara didn't argue. Instead, she stared out at the horizon, where the fused glass dunes glittered under the dawn. A graveyard and a warning, carved into the planet itself. Nadim leaned against her arm, exhaustion finally dragging him to sleep. She brushed dust from his hair and whispered, too softly for anyone else to hear. We didn't ask for this war. But they'll never laugh at us again. Her comm buzzed one last time. A coded message from command, its words stark. New intel. Catherine was not the only one. More prefects already en route. Prepare defenses. Mara's jaw set. The storm had given them one victory. But war was far from over. She rose, rifle in hand, as the dawn lit the desert glass. Humanity would endure. Humanity would fight. And humanity would finish this war, on their terms.